Zod 500 presents Canadian Elections of History. The 41st election in Canadian history took place on the 2nd of May 2011. This was the first election that I personally was alive for, although I don't remember that much because this is kind of like what I looked like in 2011. But, anyways, after leading Canada for the past 3 years, Stephen Harper made two very controversial decisions, which was the controversial prorogation of Parliament in December 2008, which ended an attempted opposition coalition, and the second a year following, which prompted public protests. Following the first prorogation, the new Liberal Party leader, Michael Ignatieff, who actually spent most of his time outside the United States and would even make remarks suggesting that he was actually more aligned with the Americans than Canadians.
While away, the only thing he missed about Canada was Algonquin Park.
There were more ads just like that released by the Conservative Party to pinpoint how much un-Canadian Michael Ignatieff really was. And Canadians obviously don't want anyone who's not a Canadian to be their prime minister. So Michael Ignatieff got a lot of heat for this by the public.
We might even have to engage in certain forms of targeted assassination.
But Michael Ignatieff's own blows weren't solely in the media department. He made some really astonishing political moves, like trying to force so many non-confidence votes on the Harper prime ministership. In September 2009, he reported that his attempt to overthrow the government and have a new election was a miscalculation, as polls showed that most Canadians didn't want another election after they had just had one the year prior. Ignatieff's popularity, as well as that of Liberals even, dropped off considerably immediately afterwards. In 2011, Elections Canada laid charges against the Conservative Party, alleging contraventions of the Canada Election Act 5 years earlier. This issue, along with the Bloc Québécois announcing his intention to vote against a budget that Stephen Harper was proposing, unless it contained numerous changes, including $2 billion in compensation to Quebec for harmonizing PST and GST, and funding for a new NHL arena in Quebec City, increased the speculation that there would be an election called soon, as the Conservatives rejected the Bloc's demand as blackmail. On March 9, 2011, Speaker of the House of Commons Peter Milliken ruled that Bev Oda, a minister of the Crown, and separately, the cabinet itself could both possibly be in contempt of Parliament. The latter for its ongoing refusal to meet opposition requests for details of proposed bills and their cost estimate. Milliken directed both matters to the committee and set as the deadline for its report the 21st of March 2011. One day before the budget was supposed to be tabled. The committee found the government to be in contempt of Parliament. The vote divided along party lines, with the governing but minority Conservative members of Parliament opposing the findings and issuing a dissenting report. After the committee released its findings, opposition leader and head of the Liberal Party, Michael Ignatieff, proposed a motion of no confidence against the Crown in Council, and on the 25th of March 2011, the House of Commons voted on the motion, and the majority agreed, by a margin of 156 to 145 with the committee's conclusions. The Liberals turned out to be the biggest chokers in Canadian history after in May 2009, they looked like they were going to form the next government, beating both the Conservatives and of course the NDP in the polls. However, in June or July 2009, they eventually got passed by the Conservatives, and the Conservatives tended to gain more support from there. And unfathomably, back in May 2009, right after the leadership debate where Jack Layton, the leader of the NDP party, proved himself a capable leader and capable prime minister, the NDP actually passed the Liberal Party in polling. Speaking of that leadership debate, let's hear a little bit of wisdom by the late, great Jack Layton.
I have to pick up on something Mr. Ignatieff said. He said before you have to walk the walk and you have to be a strong leader and respect Parliament. I've got to ask you then, why do you have the worst attendance record in the House of Commons of any member of Parliament? If you want to be Prime Minister, you better learn how to be a member of Parliament first. You know, most Canadians, if they don't show up for work, they don't get a promotion.
Mr. Lay.
Yeah, collapsing poll numbers, horrible debates, 0% attendance rate, hey, maybe not zero, but you get what I'm saying, in the Parliament, and horrible attempts and misrepresenting what the Canadians actually want and actually representing more what the Americans want. All in all, Michael Ignatieff was a horrible choice by the Liberals to run the country. Well, here are the results. The winner of this election received a majority government with 166 seats when you only needed 155. This candidate got 5,832,401 votes. That last vote was a very big Chad, and he received 39.62% of the popular vote. Now, this candidate was Stephen Harper, representing the Conservative Party, and he was elected to another term in office. Meanwhile, the Liberals got only 34 seats, 43 less than in the last election, receiving only 18.9% of the popular vote. However, a 43-seat decrease also happened to the Bloc Québécois, who went from 47 seats to just 4, while receiving only 6% of the popular vote. Now, this wasn't because the Liberals and the Conservatives made such a great push in Quebec, but rather the NDPs. They went from 36 seats in Parliament to 103. It is undoubtedly the best performance ever held by the NDP and even a third party in Canadian history. They received 4.5 million votes and 30% of the popular vote. And finally, for the first time in Canadian history, the Green Party is on the board, with Elizabeth May, the party's leader, getting elected into Parliament. This election was really interesting in so many ways. This was the first majority government since Jean Chrétien formed his in 2000. Not only was this the best showing by the NDPs, but it was also the worst showing by the Liberal Party and by a major party in Canadian history, not including the end of the Progressive Conservative Party era when they were getting, 2 seats. This is the only time the Liberal Party was not in first or second in the House of Commons. The Bloc Québécois lost official party status with only 4 seats gained in this election. In fact, they would even lose 2 due to resignations by some of their members. And the Green Party, like I just said, is finally an official Canadian party. However, if you thought that this would be the start of the NDP as the more left-leaning party and the Liberals just fading into obscurity, sadly you'd be mistaken, because just a couple months after this election, Jack Layton would unfortunately pass away. And not only that, but 2 years later, the Liberals nominated a young, charismatic son of a former Prime Minister. And I'll see you guys for the election of 2015.